So we'll get straight into it. 10 top tips for buying woodland if you're thinking of doing so. Number 1, budget. We all know how much money we've got to spend. Have a think about where that money is going to come from. Maybe you've got the cash, that's great. Maybe you're looking at getting a mortgage. I do believe it's possible. I think there's one place left that will do a woodland mortgage, but look into it yourself. Some people get personal loans to top up savings. Some people even use pensions, SIPs I think, to purchase woodland as an investment to be sold upon retirement. But the important thing about knowing your budget that we found is when you're searching, mainly online, you need to know how much you've got to spend so you don't go see woodlands that are too expensive for you. It's okay to go cheaper than what you've got, obviously, but you don't want to go too expensive. The pitfalls with that is that you're going to walk into a place and you're going to fall in love and you're not going to be able to afford it. So look at your top line budget. Have you got any contingency? Can you stretch a little bit further for the right one? So it really sort of depends on the amount of money that you've got to spend, the amount of money that you've got to play with, and then focus your search on the woodlands that you're able to afford. Now, obviously, a very contentious issue amongst the woodland community is the price per acre. It is a fact of life. We can argue about it. We can say, I'm not paying this, I'm not paying that, it's unfair. I won't comment on any of that, but what I will say is you're going to pay more for amenity woodland, and you're going to pay more per acre the smaller the woodland. It's just the way it is. We can, moan about it, but that's the truth, and that's what you have to come to face when you're looking for a woodland. With our tiny woodland, we did pay more per acre because it is so small, but in actual fact it came in under budget overall, and we're very, very, very happy with it. So have a think about that. Do you feel that it's fair? It's not arable land, it's forestry land. There are restrictions on what you can do with it, that sort of thing. So come to terms with the fact that you're going to pay more per acre the smaller the place. The next thing to think about, top tip number 2, is the size. Obviously that is linked to budget. Perhaps the more you've got to spend, the larger you can buy. But I think the key point to think of here is, what do you want to do in the woodland? Because the larger acreages that maybe need management, maybe need intervention, a lot of them do, can you manage it with the amount of people that you've got involved? So here there's just me and Dan that do the work. We do have a pest controller who comes in and helps. However, all of the heavy lifting, the thinning, the coppicing, the processing of the wood, the raising of the crowns of the oaks, all of that we do ourselves. We did say we wanted to do it with hand tools, and we do stick to that as much as possible, but we have bought a small, really diddy chainsaw to help with the processing of the wood, just time-wise. So have a think about the size. You can get lost in a couple of acres, but visit the sites and see the difference between 3 acres, 5, 8, and take your time walking around to really get a mental map of the size. For all us people who live in towns, it's difficult to imagine what 1 acre is, I think, sometimes. So always visit, have a think about what you want to do, have a think about the management implications of the size that you're taking on, and obviously it's closely linked to the budget as well. Another thing with size is check the boundaries, make sure that you're absolutely sure of where your boundaries are for that size, because then obviously there's not going to be any confusion, especially if it's a plot within a larger woodland that's been sectioned off. Most of the agents will put boundary markers. So what we always did when we visited a site, we walked the entire boundaries, because that will give you a really good idea of the complete size, because you're just walking around the perimeter, see how long it takes you, that sort of thing. I know some people want specific sizes so that they can maybe put footpaths in to do a 1 kilometre run or something like that. So have a think about the actual size that you want to take on and the potential drawbacks of that level of responsibility. With our tiny woodland, it's called our tiny woodland because it's tiny. We did want a larger plot when we first started looking. I don't know why, size matters, I suppose. However, we decided to, forego size over the other features that this woodland has, because they completely overrode the size, and now for us the size doesn't matter at all. It's actually quite important, because it means we can manage it ourselves comfortably, easily, and really enjoy the process. On to tip number 3. This is where we're going to look at restrictions. So any agent worth their salt will have a really good write-up on the woodland that you're going to view, including any specific restrictions. So we might be talking about a SSSI site, a site of special scientific interest. Often ancient woodlands have these restrictions on them. That can limit what you can do in terms of felling, laying footpaths, or, well, not laying footpaths, but creating footpaths, tracks, that sort of thing. So be aware of that. Always do a TPO search, tree preservation order search. Often you'll find in towns and cities that specific trees will have a TPO. However, you can have entire woodlands that have a blanket TPO, which means that you can't even cut back brambles or anything without the local authority's permission. Now, I am led to believe that a woodland management plan trumps a TPO. So if you are looking at getting a site that's got a TPO on it, you might want to look into getting a woodland management plan to give you, that broader range of activities that you can do to manage it. Other things are covenants on the land, overhead power lines, underground pipes as well to be aware of. If you've got a solicitor, and I do highly recommend having a solicitor to help with the purchase, then they will do all the appropriate searches. They do cost extra, but I would recommend it, because then you know exactly where you stand. What you don't potentially want in those situations is maybe a utilities company having a way leave to come on site when you don't want them on site, or it's an annoyance. Sometimes there can be a small payment in terms of that, but I know people who value privacy and don't want anybody coming on the land digging it up if it's underground pipes, that sort of thing. If something goes wrong with a utility pipe, then you might end up losing a few trees. So just be very aware of any restrictions. Top tip number 4 is check the freehold leasehold. There are a lot of woodlands in certain parts of the country that are still leasehold. Granted, some of them are 999 years, which is great, which means that it's basically yours for your lifetime and beyond. However, we specifically wanted freehold. We wanted this to be a legacy that we could pass on through our family on into infinity. It's something that we really wanted freehold specifically for that purpose, so that we could own it completely. Some leases have the peppercorn rent, some of them have restrictions. There are things that you can and can't do because the freeholder, it's written into the lease of what you've got to do. Some leaseholds have maintenance responsibilities as well. So it might be that, if you're taking on a woodland and you don't particularly want to do too much management, check what the lease says, because the lease might have something in there that you actually have to do. And if you break the lease, big legal problems. So think about freehold or leasehold. Moving on to number 5, the rights on the land, so specifically sporting rights, mineral rights. So what they are, sporting rights could be something along the lines of you own the freehold for the property, but somebody else holds the rights for the sporting or the hunting in the woodland. What that could look like in reality is that your land could be subject to sporting rights held by somebody else who runs maybe a pheasant shoot, and because they have those rights, it means they can come onto the land, they can shoot, they can put pheasant feeders out to obviously manage the shoot, and that might be something that you're not happy with. I do know of woodland owners who don't have their own sporting rights, and they have really, really good relations with the people who do. Few brace of pheasant every year, that sort of thing, nice bit of venison. And if you're happy with that, that's absolutely fine. So sporting rights and mineral rights are something to bear in mind. With the mineral rights, if they belong to somebody else, and you know, they could come on the land and dig it up basically. To get the minerals and what have you that they want to harvest. So be aware of those. To be fair, most of the woodlands that we looked at when we were searching had their own sporting and mineral rights, and our tiny woodland does have that. So have a look into it, check with the agent, check the description, make sure your solicitor checks that aspect as well. Moving on to number 6, and this is, I think, probably one of the more important ones for people. It's kind of the first thing that you think of. It's location. I think the majority of woodland owners want somewhere as close to home as possible, which is fair. You don't want to be spending too long getting there, and you don't want to be spending too much in fuel, travelling there every weekend or as often as you want to go. What we did when we were searching is, one of the provisos that we said was we wouldn't view any woodlands that were more than 2 hours away. We felt that 2 hours was enough to go spend a full day, certainly in summer, setting off early, getting home late. And it would be great for weekends or even spending weeks. 2 hours is a fair amount of journey for us personally. We were really, really lucky in that we found one that was 45-50 minute drive from our home, which is absolutely awesome because it means that we can come for an afternoon. We can even just come for a couple of hours if there's something specific we need to do or we need to check. Another thing when it comes to proximity to home is obviously owning a woodland brings certain responsibilities. So an example of that would be if you are near to a road of any description, size, and one of your trees falls onto that road, then it becomes your responsibility to sort that out. The local authority would probably get involved if it was an emergency, but you'd likely get a hefty bill. So have a think about the type of woodland you're buying. Is it near any roads, that sort of thing? And, you know, can you get there if you need to get there quickly? Something else to think about is woodland neighbours. We obviously wanted somewhere private. We wanted to feel like we were getting away from people. Not that we dislike people, but, you know, we wanted that sort of idyllic feeling of being cut off. We did view a lot of woodlands that were part of larger sites that had been cut down into parcels. If you like the community feel, then obviously go for that, 100% go for that. We wanted less of that. We didn't want specifically to be surrounded by lots of people. So we were very lucky in that we've only got one woodland neighbour they're absolutely fabulous. They're very similar to us, their vision and their sort of values in terms of the woodland, because essentially it is one woodland that's been split into two. We're very aligned, so it works perfectly. And we don't bother each other. The only time we really actually sort of see them is when we happen to turn up at the same time at the gate, have a lovely little chat, and then we go off and do our own things. So have a think about neighbours. Location as well. You might decide that you actually want somewhere that is further away. I know people who live in England who have woodlands in Scotland because they adore Scotland and they want to go there, and they will go and make that journey. So location, location, location. Number 7 is another important one. It's access. We looked at a woodland about an hour and a half from home, part of a larger site that had been split down. And when we arrived, there was a shared car park at the front, which we thought, wow, that's great, tarmacked. Then there was a gravel track partway through the larger woodland towards the plot we were looking at. Then it turned into an absolute quagmire. And I mean to the point that you probably couldn't have got a 4x4 through, you'd need a tank to get in. And that was something that really put us off, because we wanted to be able to get a car as close as possible, because you know, you're going to be bringing kit in, you're going to be bringing tools in, you've got your camping chairs, you've got everything. And then if you are felling for firewood, you're going to want to get that firewood out. So we decided that specific plot didn't have good enough access. With this woodland, we have got, we travel via A roads from home, so it's a very scenic route as well. And when we actually hit a couple of miles away from the woodland, it turns into a single metalled road, a lane, which has grass down the centre of it, hawthorn either side, hedgerows. It's beautiful, but it is metalled, it is tarmacked. And then off that lane is our main gate, which we share with next door, which leads directly into a ride, which is a woodland track, which we have managed by scything it. It is southern facing, but the reeds and the grasses were so tall it was quite boggy underneath. So what we've done over the time that we've been here is we've scythed it, brought the car in. We have got a car that's got like a 4x4 mode, but because we've scythed it, we've shortened the length of the grass. The wind has been able to get to it, the sun has been able to get to the soil, and it's really dried it out. So we can now get a car all the way into the woodland, right to base camp, which is great for us because we can unload if we come in for a couple of nights. We can then load all the wood up and everything and take it straight out. So access is really, really important. Have a think about what you're actually going to be wanting to do in the woodland. I mean, we knew that we needed a hide for our pest controller, and we also needed a forestry shelter, because we do come here all year. The majority of the work that we do takes place in winter, autumn and winter, but it can be very wet, very cold, inclement weather, high winds. We knew we needed somewhere that we could escape to eat our sandwiches, make cups of tea, and even just sit and wait out rainstorms and what have you. And our pest controller needed a hide, a permanent hide, to obviously, you know, be able to do the work that he does. So we knew that we wanted to bring a camper in. It's not a caravan and it's not a trailer tent, it's a camper, a dandy camper, absolutely great bit of kit. And we knew we needed to get it in, so we knew that we had to have good access. So always check the access. And what I would highly recommend doing, and I know it's difficult to wait, but please try and view woodlands in the worst of the weather in autumn and winter. We viewed this woodland I think December and January, and it was a mild winter that year, so it wasn't freezing cold, but all of the leaves were off the trees. We could see the landscape properly. We could see the massive swamp, wet patch that we've got, and we could actually see how bad it was going to be in the worst weather times of the year. In the summer here, the ground just dries out and it becomes so dry as it is right now. It cracks. So, you know, in terms of access for that, it's absolutely fine. So yeah, have a look at the worst times of year. Moving on from your own private access, you need to look at potential public access. The UK is, you know, home to a network of public footpaths, bridleways, cycle tracks and trails, many of which Dan and I have used ourselves, and it's wonderful to be able to see the wilderness that way by going off the beaten track. However, you need to know whether the woodland that you're looking at purchasing has got public access. It may be that you're absolutely fine with that. It may be that you're happy to have ramblers coming through, have a chat with them, get to know people. We discovered the downsides of having public access when we viewed a particular woodland. The agent had misled in the particulars. The woodland in question was described as being on a gentle slope, and that one tiny corner of this 8-acre site had a public footpath just going across the corner. So we thought, okay, we don't mind that, it's out of the way, we could put base camp somewhere else and feel quite private, that would be great. We went to visit it. The first red flag was that it wasn't a gentle slope, it was the steepest slope. I was clinging to trees trying to get down. Dan used his snowboarding skills to just, hop and skip down, but I struggled with that. I'm no mountain goat. So I had doubts within moments of arriving there. And then when we got to the bottom boundary, it hadn't said on the particulars, it was actually an old rickety fence that was of no use whatsoever, bordering onto a very, very busy train track with public trains. And then we saw the footpath, which was just a hole in the fence. And you could see where people were walking through, but the amount of litter, the amount of old fire sites, empty beer cans, crisp packets, and then to my absolute dismay, I found discarded drug paraphernalia. And we explored a little more and found that people were not sticking to the footpath. The entirety of that specific woodland had signs of people being there and disrespecting the land, and that was something that I couldn't have dealt with. I wouldn't have felt safe having friends over with children when you've got drug paraphernalia hanging about. So that was a big no-no. And then when we found our tiny woodland, there are a lot of public footpaths round and about, but none on this land. And that's really important. That's not to say we don't get people coming on the land, that's a whole different story, but nobody has the right to, and I think that's important. So have a look into public access. What are you happy with, and will that affect your choice of woodland? Point number 9 is tree species. What is there in the woodland that you're looking at purchasing? It may be that you're looking to make your own furniture. It might be that you want to do that sort of woodland craft. You might want Corsican pine because of the saleable value. You might be confident enough to fell them, process them, do a deal with a timber yard, have them collected, make a few quid out of it. It could be that you're maybe wanting to do wildlife conservation, which is the viewpoint that we come from. Everybody's individual. So we knew that we wanted British broadleaf, specifically oak, because they do support the largest number of species, but also a good mix that will serve the wildlife and that we can manage specifically for that purpose. So here we've got, I think in order of planting, ash was the most. Sadly, we've lost all of that, most of it. I think we've maybe got 2 healthy ash on site. Oak, we've got rowan, we've got wild cherry, we've got many other species as well. So thinking about that specifically, have a look at the tree species mix that you've got on the site of the woodland that you're looking at, and then look into the possible pests and diseases. I can't remember the name of the specific pest, but recently there was a woodland that had to be clear felled. I don't know why I want to say spruce bark beetle, but it was something along those lines, and the woodland owner basically lost their entire woodland. Now, obviously that's not the end of the world, because that can now be planted with British natives, and that is what they are going to do. However, heartbreaking, a lot of expense, a lot of work to deal with that. So when we viewed this woodland, we came in winter because we wanted to see the shape, the form of the trees, how they'd grown, and we wanted to see what hadn't made it. We knew the ash wouldn't have done very well on that score, and it hasn't. But I think I've said before, we are only taking down the ash that are visibly dead. The ash that are still alive, we're actually leaving in the hope that they parent resistant offspring, or maybe even recover from it. So be aware of the pests and diseases. Have a look at things like bracken. Bracken can completely take over a woodland. It will strangle all of the native wildflowers, and bracken is also notoriously good habitat for ticks. Scotland really struggle with that. We do have a tick map for the entire of the UK, so you can check the tick map online to see whether ticks are known to be commonplace in a specific area. But bracken, really, if you're looking at managing a woodland properly, you really need to do bracken clearance, which can be done with a scythe, but it is a lot of work. And obviously, if you're going to have children, if you're going to have guests, there are measures that you need to take to keep an eye out for ticks, and then take action if somebody does get bitten by a tick because of the Lyme disease. So be aware of that. Rhododendron is another one to watch out for. That was a ground cover plant that was brought in as game cover in woodlands where there were shoots, and it taken over, similar to bracken. It strangles everything out. It acidifies the soil, making it inhospitable to the native plants, and you can find that very quickly you've got a monoculture. So rhododendron does need removing. If there's a woodland that you like and it's got rhododendron, how much is in there? And the thing with rhododendron as well is you can cut it down and it keeps coming back. It's really hard to fully get rid of. You can cut a rhododendron tree down, lay the branches on the ground thinking that they'll die, but they will actually take root. So bear that in mind. We did look at woodlands that had rhododendron. They didn't have much of it, and we knew that it would be something that we would have to tackle. So bear in mind the species. Are they the ones that you want? Whether it be, timber trees, or whether it be for supporting wildlife. And obviously have a think about what pests and diseases they might then be prone to. What are the management techniques? Are you going to monitor that? How much money might it cost to sort out if something went wrong? Last but not least is the final top tip, and it comes from the heart. Do you fall in love with somewhere? It could be that it doesn't meet all of your requirements, it doesn't tick all of the boxes, all of the top tips I've mentioned previously, but sometimes you can walk into a place and just think, this is the home of my soul, I need it. We had a strange experience with our tiny woodland, because the first time we visited, we hadn't seen many woodlands at that point because we looked at loads. And we came, and I had just got in my head this idea that I wanted it to be fairy tale. I wanted old gnarly oaks with owls' nests in them, and little dingly dells where the fairies played. And we came here in the December and the January, first of all in December, and it was just stark. Really uniform rows of trees, tiny little place, didn't seem to hold any magic whatsoever. And then we went on to look at other woodlands, a brief period of time, and for some reason we came back. And when we'd seen all the other woodlands and we'd looked at the pros and cons of all the others, we suddenly realised this was the place for us. It has got absolutely everything on our list. The only thing that it was not was the size we wanted. But we were happy to, overlook that and go for somewhere smaller. And I've spoken about this before. but from that second visit onwards, we both just continued to fall in love with the place. We took ownership, I think the February. So we watched it. We were here every single weekend, and we watched it just blossom and, you know, turn into this beautiful green place that you can see now. End of May now, so everything is looking the most lush it will look for the entire whole of the year. So yeah, sometimes there are things that you are happy to not have on your wish list if you just go somewhere and you just know. So I hope all of that has made sense. If you've got any questions, please just ask in the comments. I may have missed things. Happy to answer any questions. And as always, please like and please subscribe. It is completely free. We're really so happy every time we get a new subscriber. We do a little celebration because it really means that we're getting the message out there. So thank you for watching.